Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face.
Well, welcome back to Face to Face. We are joined by another very special guest here with us today. Robert Osborne is returning to the show. He's certainly been on it before, and he was a guest of mine not that long ago on 640 Radio on a show called On Point, where we chatted about his new film, quite disturbing new film, and yet ultimately hopeful, Malcolm is Missing. I mean, to say that this is a riveting film and a riveting story is an understatement. It's a true crime documentary. It's about a single mom by the name of Brooke, who, mother of two, actually, who investigates her father's murder in Mexico. And talk about perseverance. Talk about pushing back against just crazy, ridiculous odds. She's able to bring her father's killers to justice. A Port Hope woman's 4-year journey. Talk about investigative discovery. And that's what Robert and I talk about. We talk about this story, and we talk about Brooke, and we talk about some of the details, obviously, and some of the challenges that Robert and his company had making the film. But we also talk a great deal about emotions and intuition and hearts and minds. And what is this thing called discovery and investigation really all about? We touch on corruption and justice. And a large part of our conversation is really, I think, in honor of Brooke, who took on the system, and who clearly has a passionate and tenacious spirit, and ultimately won. And I think this is a testament for all of us to not give up and to persevere. And I think too, and I think Robert would agree with me on this. This is a film about family. And it's about, it's a film about love and about commitment. And I think, truthfully, what it means to go the extra mile. So stay tuned. Robert Osborne coming right up. The film is called Malcolm is Missing. It's going to be streaming on CBC Gem. In fact, probably already is. So check it out there. I'm in the middle of Hot Docs right now, and just some great films and great interviews coming up. So stay tuned for those. And davidpecklive.com for more information about what I do, about my writing and my speaking. Face2facelive.ca. It'll get you to the same place, but a different page. And that's where you'll find well over 600 interviews that I've been doing for close to 10 years now, which is just crazy. And I've got some new news coming up in the not so distant future that I'm eager to share with you. And it's coming soon. So stay tuned for that. And please leave us a review. First of all, of course, subscribe to Face to Face wherever you listen to podcasts. But a review would be terrific. That little bit of digital push can go a long way. But in the meantime, stay tuned. Malcolm is Missing is the film. You can see it on CBC Gem. And Robert Osborne is my guest coming right up. My name's David Peck, and you're listening to Face to Face. And we have a very special guest here with us today. He's a filmmaker. He's an investigative reporter. I think I can call him that. Robert Osborne is here with us from Dan Builder Productions to talk about his new film, Malcolm is Missing. Robert, thanks for joining us today on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it.
So I have so many questions. And first of all, I guess congratulations on the film. I don't know, can you congratulate somebody on this film? I guess getting across the finish line, it's a pretty serious film we're talking about here, Robert. Malcolm is Missing. It's relevant to Canadians on so many levels. Before we go there, can you unpack a little bit about the story for us?
Well, I think it's relevant to more than just Canadians. I think it's relevant to anybody who decides they're going to travel to Mexico, because what this poor woman who is the central subject of our documentary discovered that when something goes wrong in Mexico in the judicial system, you are in for a world of pain. And so that can happen to anyone. The way I like to describe it, and this is about my third or fourth documentary that I've done on people getting into problems in Mexico. 99% of the time, you're going to go to Mexico, you're going to have a great time, you're going to really enjoy the country. I really love the people of Mexico.
I've been warm. A couple times, love it.
They're warm, they're kind, they're generous. I cannot say enough about how much I love the people down there. But if you ever happen to be that 1% that runs into a scenario where you then are at the mercy of the Mexican justice system, you are in a lot of trouble. And that's what happened here. This person, Brooke, her father went to Mexico and he went missing. He disappeared one day. And so the story is really the Brooke's journey to go down there to try and find what happened to her father. And then after finding out what happened to her father, to try and get the Mexican authorities to do something about what had happened. And that ended up being it's an ongoing nightmare. She's 3 years into this and she still has not got complete satisfaction.
Thousands of dollars in legal fees, the emotional toll,
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Robert, the PTSD from something like this, I think, would be fairly severe and long term, and not just for her, but her partner and her kids and so on. I mean, it's gonna, I don't know, it's gonna kind of reach out and grab you in ways that you probably can't even imagine.
Well, the film operates on two levels, and I put that down to the fact that both my significant other, Jari, and myself co-directed and co-produced this film. And what that brought to it was it brought my particular investigative skills, but it brought Jari's really fine sense of intuition about being able to bring people's emotions out, getting people to talk candidly about what is going on inside their hearts and their minds. So you've got it operating on the level of an investigative documentary. And then you've got another one, which is Brooke's emotional journey as she goes through this ordeal and what she learns about herself and what the impact on her family and her friends and everything else like that is, the sort of maelstrom around her.
So important to work on that head-heart level, it seems to me. And I would think as a storyteller and a filmmaker, you're wanting to build that bridge. I mean,
absolutely.
And you do it very well in this film. Both you and Jari do it very well. And that's, I guess, what I mean about the congratulations. It is kind of hard to say, hey, well done, Robert, on this film, because it's just the subject matter is it's tough. It's tough to watch it, and yet you can't help but, in a way, stand up and applaud at the end. So I guess that's my way of saying to viewers, by the way, everyone, film Malcolm is Missing is going to be released on November 20th, so it's coming up fairly soon on the documentary channel, 9 p.m. You can see it there, and eventually to be released on CBC Gem as well. Robert, I called you an investigative reporter. Does that in any way make you uncomfy, or would you say, no, I'm a filmmaker? That's who I am.
Well, I can't ignore the fact that for 30 years of my life, I worked as an investigative journalist.
There you go.
And those skills have been applied to every one of my films. Sure. They've all had an investigative element to them. So, I call myself a filmmaker, but that's definitely part of my history.
So is this so you talk about the Mexican justice system. Could you in some ways say, I don't know, kind of buyer beware on many different justice systems? I mean, you've certainly traveled, you've made a lot of films, you've lived a lot of life. Is this, in this case with this film, it's about Mexico, but is this kind of about, I don't know, a vulnerability of the tourists going into an environment?
Oh,
you know
definitely.
what I mean?
Yeah. Listen, the Mexican justice system, it is, and I don't over exaggerate this, it's one of the most corrupt on the planet. I've read a mound of information on this, and studies coming out of Mexico suggest that in terms of serious crime, somewhere between 2 to 5% of serious crime is solved in Mexico, and about the same ever sees any kind of a trial. So, I mean, when you're,
yeah.
and the other thing you've got to factor in on that is there's a massive corruption factor in the judicial system down there. Again, another study, I was looking at it today because I'm doing some writing. I'm writing a book version of Malcolm, and I was looking at these statistics today. 54% of people in Mexico pay a bribe to a police officer whenever they have any contact with him or her.
Yeah,
I mean, those numbers are staggering. And we experienced it ourselves. You know, when we were down there, we had this great fixer in Mexico named Gabriel. And at one point, he made a questionable turn, not really too serious, but it was he turned left and he may have, raced ahead of a car or something like that. So, the sirens go off behind us and we're pulled over to the side of the road by the police. And he turns to us and he says, "Let me take care of this. Don't say anything. Put your masks up over your face. Put all your gear on the ground so that they can't see it, and just let me handle it." And the police officer came up, and there's some exchange, and the exchange goes on for about 5 minutes. And eventually, Gabriel reaches into his wallet and he passes over 800 pesos to the cop, and the cop salutes us and waves us on.
Wow.
And afterwards, Gabriel said, okay, so his starting position was he was going to confiscate the vehicle and everything in it. Then he said he had to have 3,000 pesos. And eventually I got him down to 800 pesos, which is about $40, 40 US, right?
Wow.
But
so
that
you're haggling.
It was so matter of fact.
Yeah, so matter of fact. It's just a part of the culture.
There wasn't anything
Don't even need to
unusual
manage
about
that expectation. It's
absolutely
just there.
It was just there. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I've done a fair bit of traveling over the years, and I remember someone once saying to me, if you're ever stopped by a police officer in particular countries, do not hand over your passport. Always carry a photocopy of your passport. And I actually was in a position where I did that once, and it actually, I think, I was told later, it probably paid off. They would have sort of pseudo-confiscated it. And of course, you would have had to pay some kind of bribe to get it back. Robert, do you think at all that bribes are just another form of tax in some cases? Does that?
It is on a certain level. I mean, there's an empathy that is to be had with when you learn the fact that an average policeman in Mexico makes a couple of $100 a month.
There you go.
And there is also wages. So these people do not make enough to survive on by being police officers. There's also an expectation. There's a trickle theory that goes upward that whatever they make on the street, the expectation from their superior is that they have to kick back a certain amount every day, and so on and so forth up the chain of command. So yes, I am sympathetic for them that this is inflicted on them in order to just merely survive down there. On the other hand, when you're dealing with a situation like Brooks, she had to do things like, not her personally, but her lawyer was telling her about money that was being paid to authorities on a regular basis just to get them to do their regular job, to get them to enforce a warrant or to get them to file an action in a court,
Is it a bit of apathy as well, or is it just another expectation on the side of the police community that says, "Oh, I can make a little extra, so therefore I'm not really going to step in, because if somebody wants me to step in, they're going to pay for it."
I think there's a real sort of a cause and effect relationship between the money that's paid, the extra money that is almost always on the table, and the action that you can expect. And that's what Brooke really eventually found out. What she found, she was able to determine who had caused her father to disappear very quickly, as you know, and she had irrefutable proof of what had happened.
Like, what else do you need?
I mean, she literally had the picture of the crime being committed. And yet, when she took that to the police, that wasn't enough. And that was the beginning of this long journey.
Right.
The bigger fight was not discovering who had done something to her father, initially thinking it was a kidnapping, but it was to get the police to do something, to follow up on an investigation, to deal with this crime.
How do you define justice now? Robert, we've been talking about, vulnerability. We've been talking about corruption and about the Mexican, I guess you could say, criminal justice system, maybe small c and small j. What do you take away from I guess the question is, are you a better person because you've made the film? Are you a better informed person as a result of making this film and stepping into Brooke's story in this way? Or are you just more of a cynic?
I'm not cynical, because I think the uplifting part for me was to follow this person who is a very ordinary person. She's just a single mother of two from Port Hope, Ontario, and to watch her rise to the occasion and to do what many people thought was just impossible. She takes on this incredibly corrupt system, and she keeps winning, right? She hasn't won everything, but by gosh, she has won several significant victories, and it's only because of her tenacity and her refusal to say, this is hopeless and I am going to just despair and give up on this. And that, to me, the kind of person that I am, to be in contact with Brooke and to see her and what she does and how she faced this situation, that to me was really uplifting.
Do you think? I think near the end of the film, and that's certainly a question I had, and I think it was actually raised in the film. But can you really ever win in a situation like this? Do you know what I mean? And maybe the distinction is, can you ever really win emotionally? Because everything comes with a cost. And as I watch Brooke, and you talk about tenacity, talk about having her sleeves rolled up from the get-go, and going to the family and saying, just how far are we willing to go with this? Not only financially, but, there's so many things, so many footnotes to it. And what I love about the film, Robert, is I found myself most of the 90 minutes just, okay, so what about me? If this was my father, how deep would I be going? I mean, when we start seeing some of that footage, we're talking kind of like Sherlock Holmesy stuff, it's kind of creepy. It's kind of, like you say, it's all there. What else do you need? I'm not sure. I don't know. Would I have then taken another deeper jump into the deep end? And remember, she had no training. She's not someone who comes to it with any kind of background in investigation. She was learning as she was going. I know,
but David, that's a really interesting point about winning and whether it's possible to win in a situation like that. And there's a really a very courageous investigative journalist in Mexico that appears in the film.
Yes.
I am a huge fan, and I cannot believe how courageous he is. His name is Jorge Olmas. And at one point I asked him that same question. I said, because he was reaching the point.
Robert, can I just interrupt? I think my favorite line in the film is, in Mexico, the lower the profile, the better. I'm pretty sure that was
that's Jorge.
That was his line.
That's Jorge, who has been threatened with death several times as a journalist. But at one point he said, I asked him, I said, do you think Brooke is going to win this?
Yeah.
And he thought about it, and he said, well, you know what? Legally, yes. I don't see any way that these three people can now get out of being convicted. The evidence is overwhelming. It's such a high-profile case in Mexico and Canada. I don't think so. But he turns it around exactly the way you asked it, and he said, but I'm not sure she's going to win this emotionally, because I don't know that she will ever get her father back. And so, it's a bittersweet victory for her. And I thought that was very perceptive of Jorge.
It also shows the kind of, to me anyway, it kind of reveals the kind of individual he is. I mean, he cares. He's in this for the story, the human condition matters to Jorge, it seems to me. I mean, right? He's not just there for the story. He's not just there for the facts.
Yeah.
He's working on a whole other level, which I think is brilliant. That's the empathy. And I don't know. I think your film said to me, empathy leads us towards justice. And I'm not sure why I even got there, but I think our conversation now is getting me even further along to that idea that it's only when we're going to be able to do what Jorge did, it seems to me, that we're going to be able to get to a point. Now maybe I'm just going to sound way too idealistic here, but that we're going to get to a place where we can say, you know what, this is what matters. This is when we can get beyond sexism and racism and militarism and so on, when we can actually empathize with others.
Well, another remarkable thing that this journey provided me with was meeting and talking to the people who, at times, even at risk to themselves,
totally
helped Brooke along the way. There were dozens of people who stepped forward. Her father's good friend, Jesus, who turns up. At the very end, there's a body search that happens. The police finally, 3 years after the fact, decide to go and search some of these remote areas with body sniffing dogs. And he goes as her proxy, and he takes a few pictures for us with his camera. But you can see on his face, I don't know if you did, but he's really nervous because the people around him are the people who he knows can destroy his life on a whim. Right. They are military, they are police, they are corrupt officials, and he's standing amidst dozens of them only because he wants to help Brooke out. And that's the extent to which Jesus will go to help her. And that says something about friendship, and it says something about real courage. And there were all kinds of people who did that for her.
Yeah. I mean, what is that a question people are going to be working through around the kitchen table, the living room coffee table afterwards? Just how far would I be willing to go?
I hope so.
Yeah, I do too. Like, I love your comment earlier about Brooke, just pushing back against the system, because really isn't that the kind of, for me, one of the bigger lessons as well, one of the bigger metaphors that sometimes it really does. It pays the wrong word, but I guess pays off, I suppose, not in a financial way, but in a, oh man, you'd like
the easiest thing for Brooke to do would have been to spend some time grieving for her father, to go down there, to do a couple of things to make sure that, that there was no chance that this was something that could be resolved in an easy manner. And at a certain point, she could have said, you know what, I have to just accept this. And, I cannot bring my father home in any sense of it. And that would have been the easy thing to do. And she just decided, no, I am not going to take the easy thing. I am going to bring my father home one way or another. I'm going to bring him home.
Well, what's so fascinating to me is there's a ripple to this, right? And the ripple will continue for years to come. And some of it will probably be negative, I would think, but not just a ripple in her life. This could have an impact. The film, it's led you to tell this story, to this interview, to another conversation, right? And that's, I don't know, that's what makes me hopeful about where we're heading as a human race, right? It's why I believe in change, and I believe in that splash. And you got to trust the ripple at some point, it seems to me.
Brooke has been dependent upon the ripple, and not just from the kindness of strangers, but from the involvement of people in the media. You look at the timeline on this, and you can see where Jorge wrote definitive articles, and within a few days, you can see the judiciary getting off their keisters and realizing, oh, geez, we better do something because we're taking a lot of heat in the media. And even when we got involved and I started phoning the head prosecutor in Guadalajara and asking him really hard questions about why this third person had never been picked up. And within a week of that happening, they picked him up in a town north of Puerto Vallarta, and he's in jail the next thing you know. And I mean, that's not my way of bragging, but it is by way of saying there's a ripple effect.
Oh, absolutely.
And just had to sort of play and ride those ripple effects in order to be able to be successful.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. We've got to wrap up here, sadly, Robert. Is there? I mean, I love what you said earlier on in the beginning before we went to the break about how you love Mexico and you love the country and the people and so on. I mean, this isn't a warning, a red flag to don't travel to Mexico, or would you say it is, or is it?
No, I've been back there a couple of times since we did principal photography, and I really love Mexico. I did my first trip to Mexico City, where I spent several days in there. We had some pickup filming to do, and I think that I was blown away by Mexico City. It's part
I've heard
kind of London. It's part Hong Kong. It's got
amazing.
A little bit of everything rolled into it.
Wow.
But at the same time, as I love that city, I was aware that when our fixer dropped us off, he said to us, okay, you're in the romantic district here and it's safe. Don't go 3 blocks that way.
Right.
Don't go 5 blocks that way. And on and so on and so forth.
Yeah, sure,
and he wasn't kidding around. He was serious about that. So go to Mexico and enjoy the people and enjoy the country, but do so with an awareness that if something goes south, you got to move fast and you got to move decisively.
Yeah, well, I would say that's pretty wise about travel anywhere. But Robert, thanks so much. Great film. I hope lots of people get to see it. And by the way, it is premiering on the documentary channel November 20th, 9 p.m. The film is Malcolm is Missing. And we've been chatting with Robert Osborne, filmmaker, producer from Dam Builder Productions. Robert, thanks for joining us tonight on the show.
Thank you for having me, David. As always, a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, there you have it. That was Robert Osborne chatting about his new film, Malcolm is Missing. I trust you enjoyed our conversation. It was a little shorter than usual, and maybe we're going to have Robert back on. Always such an engaging guest, always so many things to talk about and so many places that we could go. And really, ultimately, a difficult film in some respects, a difficult story, but ultimately uplifting. And it really is a testament for all of us to be hopeful and to roll up our sleeves and to persevere. And so I trust you enjoyed the interview, and you will catch the film Malcolm is Missing, CBC Gem. It is streaming as I was going to say as I speak, but that's kind of silly because you're listening, and I'm now trying to make a joke out of something that's clearly not all that funny. Anyway, stay tuned. We have so much more coming up. Please check out davidpecklive.com for more information about my writing and speaking. You can pick up a copy of Real Change is Incremental there, and also facetofacelive.ca for so many other interviews that I've been doing over the past few years. Check it out. I think I'm coming up on my 10th year of podcasting, and it's an amazing role to have, and I feel so blessed, and it's just been a real opportunity to learn so much and to meet so many wonderful people. So stay tuned for what's next. My name's David Peck, and you've been listening to Face to Face.